Hi there. My name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. I'm just going to make sure that we have a good sound quality here and make sure that everything is a go. Okay, terrific. So I'm happy to be joined by Bruce Bowser, who is president and CEO of AMJ Campbell Van Lines. Bruce joined AMJ as managing partner and vice president in 1992. So several years ago, Bruce, thanks very much for joining. And it's great seeing you once again. So if anybody has any questions about that you want to ask Bruce, feel free to post them in either the event or the stage chat, and I will see them. You're welcome to ask Bruce any questions that you're interested. I'll moderate from here. And so Bruce, thanks very much again for joining. Lots to cover. We have about half an hour or so. I think, for this topic, the audience is our presidents. So really understanding, what it takes to run a business as big as AMJ, kind of how you got there, the connections that you made. So why don't you share maybe some tips and thoughts as to, how you run such a big business, like what it means, what are the challenges that you have and how you deal with them?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. And it's great to be back. Thank you for having me, and always enjoy spending time with you and with other presidents. I think I have the good fortune now of looking back over 26 years of being president and learning from mistakes I made along the way, and being able to share those insights. So in terms of growing the business, I think for me, I would fall into the visionary category of I'm more of a visionary than I am an operator. So for me, it was always important that that I knew what the vision of the business was, and I spent time working on that vision. So, for me, I tell people that, a lot of entrepreneurs, it's easy, and presidents, it's easy to get caught up in working in the business, right? They're out on the warehouse floor, and that's important, and they're working in the business, but they don't spend enough time working on the business. Where is it that you want the business to go? So, I learned early in my career that, I needed to spend time if I was going to grow AMJ, and if we were going to grow into different product lines. And, our vision was, to always be the largest, most successful, and most valued moving and storage company, which grew to other parts of the business. But to do that, I needed to surround myself with good people. I needed to be able to, stand back from the business on a regular basis. And, I would carve it into my schedule. I still carve it into my schedule to take time to vision for the business. Where is it that we want to go? And ask the difficult questions, and, look at the people that we have. And, I've always been a big fan of, Jim Collins, and he speaks a lot about that, companies built for last. This book, Built to Last, is a great book. And talks about, when you start a business, quite often the team that you have when you start is not the team that you need today, or that you need to get to the next point. And so, he's big. He uses the terminology of, seats on the bus. Make sure you got the right people in the right seats. So, I spent a lot of my career, really, trying to be clear on what the vision was, making the time for that, and then, surrounding myself with good people.
And what kind of qualities do you look for? And it's going to change over time, of course, too. But the people that you do hire in senior positions, what are the qualities? What has changed over the years that you notice that you might hire someone now that you may not have hired 10 years ago, perhaps?
Yeah. Well, I think it begins with sort of being clear on what is it you're looking for in the role. Because again, I think a lot of people, they'll meet somebody that's, gregarious, outgoing, bubbly, and hire them because they have good energy, which is not a bad thing. But, I think it's more important that you really are clear on, what you want that person to be doing. And then I was always a big fan, go and get the very best. Like, my competitors hated me because I would literally call when I first started, with AMJ, I'd call my competitors, and the receptionist would answer. I'd say, hey, look, who's your top salesperson? And they say, oh, that's so-and-so. And I'd say, can I speak to them? And they say, sure. So I get that person on the line and say, hey, look, it's Bruce Bowser, president of AMJ Campbell. I understand you're one of the top salespeople in your business. I'd love to have a coffee with you. And they're always like, oh, I'm happy. And I said, I get that because you're a top salesperson, but I'd love to have a coffee. You just talk a bit about, it's always good to have options out there. And that's how I did it. I would, look for who was the best operations person, who was the best salesperson, who was the best accountant, and go out and seek the best in the business.
That's great. I think you're absolutely right in terms of the president's going to be the best salesperson for your organization, right? To sell your organization. And obviously that's what you did, which is great. So, in terms of, we're going to have to address COVID, obviously, in one form or another. I know people are kind of tired a little bit of it, but where do you see like your industry going? Like, what changes might overcome? And maybe for presidents who are watching, what should they watch for as well? What should they be thinking about in terms of their businesses? Because there's we've talked about, or in the past, there's been the discussion of the K-shaped recovery. So there's some companies that are doing very well out of this, and some companies that are going to be out of business if they haven't already. So maybe talk about the two different types, maybe the K, the upper part of the K and the lower part of the K, and what presidents can do in either case.
Yeah. So look, COVID has obviously been, a huge hit to most businesses. I mean, a lot of businesses have thrived through it because of the business they're in. If you're in the delivery business, you're in a great spot. If you're in the grocery business, you're in a great spot. If you're in the hospitality and airline business, it's that's a tough place to be at. I think we talked about this, one of our other calls and I'll just say quickly, for the first, we're now into 8 months of COVID almost, and for the first 2 to 3 months, I think everybody was hopeful that COVID would be short-lived and that it would just be a hiccup when we get on with our business. And a lot of people, I think, have got stuck in that hope stage. And you and I know hope is not a plan, right? You need to have a plan. And so, entrepreneurs and presidents and executives I've been speaking with over the last, we need to plan our businesses. With looking at ways to pivot. If in the residential moving business slowed down initially at first. Everybody just kind of hit the brakes on everything, and so we got into doing work for for hospitals, for food banks, for home delivery companies, for furniture companies, and really pivoted, as did a lot of other companies, to do that. So, look, I'm hopeful that COVID will be will be something we'll forget about by this time next year. That we'll have a vaccine and be over it. I wish we had better rapid testing for companies that are essential, so that we could not get shut down as quickly as we are, especially as we get into this second phase. But look, in my lifetime, I think COVID has been the most traumatic event that's impacted people around the world and the economy. But we've also had other events that have recessions that have really slowed us down. And one of the things I love about entrepreneurs is that the very thing that makes them an entrepreneur, that passion, that desire, and that enthusiasm is what helps them to maintain that through challenging times, right? They just look for ways to pivot, and ways to a lot of businesses are growing through this, right? They're just they're becoming e-commerce is the way of the future.
At what point would you tell, and we'll talk about your coaching side soon as well here, but at what point would you tell a president, hey, drop what you're doing? Because like as presidents, you and business owners and entrepreneurs, you tend to kind of stick with it. Hey, this is going to come back, it's going to work. But at some point, you kind of cut your losses, and you got to go down perhaps a different direction. So how do you overcome that emotional side of things and say, hey, look, this is a business thing. This is not your something that you need to keep going. So how would...
Sure. Well, look, I think in some ways COVID has made it a little more graceful, if anything, to pull the plug. Nobody's going to fault you during COVID if your business fails and you did your best. I think the challenge for some people has been trying to hang on to to keeping all their employees when they don't have revenue streams, right? And as difficult as it is to to let people go or to lay people off or to slow down operations, shut down certain operations. I mean, that's a lifeline. And in the early days with AMJ, when we were having our weekly COVID calls with our senior management team, we were having this conversation. I said, look, it's better to protect the 2,500 jobs we have long term by letting some people off now until we see where this goes, than burning through all of our cashes and resources and being out of business in 6 months' time, right? Because entrepreneurs do not plan. Entrepreneurs do not sit on a huge nest egg, generally speaking, of cash. I mean, when in my business, when we had extra cash, we would open another location. We would buy newer trucks. We would grow our business and invest in technology and innovation. And so, I mean, there's not a lot of companies out there that, especially smaller organizations, entrepreneurial organizations, that have that nest egg to be able to sit on. So it's like, protect your cash. If you haven't been doing that now, there's no better time than today to really take stock and say, okay, the end is not in sight. I mean, look, as much as I say, I think this time next year we could have a vaccine and potentially have this under control. I still think you should plan for the worst.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hope for the best.
I'm here with Bruce Bowser, who's president and CEO of AMJ Campbell Van Lines. My name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. Feel free, if you're watching, you have a question for Bruce, you want to know about business, how he grew it, anything to do with running a massive business, or just even kind of starting from scratch. Because Bruce, you took over AMJ a number of years ago, and so you had the same. Hey, I got to start somewhere and build it. Although there was obviously a bit of a runway there, but maybe talk about the early days, because I mean you acquired the business. So what challenges do you see now from a business perspective if somebody were to acquire a business now versus 30, 40 years ago? Like, what would you suggest to people acquiring a business to start?
Sure. Look, I mean, I think whether it's 30 or 40 years ago or today, if you're acquiring a business or getting into you're new into a business that you haven't been in before, it's about looking for fresh ideas. So when I came into AMJ, I came from a banking background. I didn't come from a moving and transportation background. So I was able to bring a fresh set of eyes to the business. And if you can't do that, so if you're in the transportation business, you're looking at buying another transportation business, find somebody, whether it's a consultant, a coach, somebody you can bring in to look at the business with fresh eyes, to see things that you may not see because you have, industry blinders on. And, we did all sorts of new and exciting things when I came on at AMJ and created, so it wasn't just, Bruce bringing these ideas. It was creating a culture of innovation in the business, right? So it was, bringing people together from the drivers, the operations, the dispatchers, the salespeople, the management people, bring them into a room together and say, okay, this is how we currently do it. We need to up our game. We need to come up with new and innovative ways of doing things, and just brainstorming around what you can do that that your competitors aren't doing. Look at what your competitors are doing, right? I mean, a lot of companies are, like I said earlier, they're so busy working in the business, they don't work on the business. So look at what your competitors are doing, and up the game. I mean, I remember, in the early years of our business, we looked at what were the pain points in moving. What were the things that cause people lots of grief, and moving industry can be a tough industry. And so we came up with these 10 pain points, the things that could go wrong in a move. And we developed this. Everybody thought we were crazy at this time, like a money back guarantee program that said, look, if we don't arrive on time, if we damage your goods and we don't replace them or repair them to your satisfaction in 30 days, if we overestimate your bill, all the things that could go wrong, we'll give you back 10% of your move. And it was really about doing something that others weren't prepared to do, and standing behind it, right? I mean, everybody in the organization was accountable for their piece of that pie, right? If you're the driver and you couldn't get there on time, you needed to call the customer and say, look, I'm stuck in a snowstorm or there's traffic, I'll be there, a few minutes late, bring some coffee, whatever. If you're running our claims department, you knew that we had a 30-day guarantee that we would repair or replace, anything damaged within the 30-day period. And so everybody was accountable for it. So, I think it's really about, looking at the business with a fresh set of eyes to see what can you do that would trump your competitor. What can you do that nobody else is doing? AMJ, has taken a lot of pride in inventing new technologies, right? We put a container, a moving container that kind of rivals pods out on the roads about 5 years ago, that we saw shipments getting smaller, and these big long trucks going across the country weren't as efficient. So as a group, we got together and looked at, what could we do to solve that problem? And out of that, we patented, invented, and prototyped the container that now, is probably the number one container for moving. It is for sure in Canada, the number one container for moving small shipments across the country, and now it's expanded into the U.S. So I'm bragging a little bit about AMJ, but I'm really making the point. It's about looking for new, creative, innovative ways to do stuff.
That's great. That's excellent. So how do you glue everybody together? Because it's such a diverse group of employees. Maybe it didn't really change after COVID. I don't know, because everybody was across Canada. But how do you glue everybody together? How do you keep that culture? Because one of the big issues right now that companies are facing is trying to maintain a culture when everybody is working remotely or working independently. But you had that before even COVID, right?
Yeah, look, I think it's a good question, and we did with our head office at AMJ, we went virtual 2.5 years ago, so if we had a bit of a head start. But I call it the water cooler conversation piece of the business, the water cooler culture. One of the things that that we've lost through COVID is the ability to get people together. And so for me, and for a lot of leaders, I think it's really been about how do you communicate well during COVID, right? I mean, and how do you get creative in doing that? So we'll have meetings like this where we'll do Zoom or some form of live meeting, and we'll have Starbucks delivered. We know what your favorite Starbucks. We'll have Starbucks delivered to your home. If it's a lunch meeting, we'll have lunch delivered to your home. We'll do the same for clients, and it's really about getting creative. We'll have group yoga classes, group fitness classes that can be done virtually online to help people sort of cope with maintaining some of that culture. And where possible, we'll have groups get together in small safe ways to do some networking together. But yeah, I really think there's lots of good examples out there, with a little bit of Google searching about what companies are doing to maintain that culture, because it is challenging. As much as I might like virtual work, you need to be around people. You need to have interaction. You need to have communication. You need to have some breaks built into your day. So finding ways to do that.
That's great advice. Biggest challenge that you've had aside from COVID? Maybe this might be the biggest challenge, but aside from COVID. Yeah, the biggest challenge you've had over the years, how you've dealt with it, how you problem solved it, perhaps.
Well, I mean, look, there's always going to be problems and challenges. I think for me, it wasn't so much about the challenges as it was knowing I had resources to reach out to. So I've always had somebody in my career that either mentored me, coached me, combined with a good solid management team, senior management team that that I could share things with during challenging times. And I think that's really key to to the success of an entrepreneur. Surrounding yourself with people, whether it's EO, YPO, whatever the organization is, of peers that can help you during challenging times. I mean, look, I went through a hostile takeover bid with our business. We went through challenging times during the really challenging times during the 2007 2008 recession, where we were heavily leveraged. Was not fun at all. I think advice like staying close to your key relationships is super important, right? So as a president and entrepreneur, you should not advocate your relationship with your bank or with your key customers. Keep those people close to you. You may not be the only person, but when things go bad, it's never good when you don't know your banker, right? You want to maintain those relationships. You want to maintain your relationship with the key suppliers and be close to them.
So my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. I'm here with Bruce Bowser, President and CEO of AMJ Campbell Van Lines. We have about 10 minutes left here, so if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the event chat, and I will moderate. Best and worst decisions, Bruce, over the years? Yes.
So just a point of clarification. I am no longer president of AMJ Campbell. So
Sure.
we passed the baton. I exited as president a little over a year ago, and our new president is Pierre Frappé, who's doing an amazing job. And talk about baptism by fire. I mean, he comes in and right shortly after his he got his feet wet, gets into COVID, and he has done an amazing job of managing the business through COVID and doing those things I'm talking about, communicating, getting people around him. So as much as I had a wonderful, 26-year ride as president, I am no longer president of AMJ. And quite frankly, I'm not sure I miss some of the day-to-day during times like this. But, so you said, I think the question was...
best and worst decision that you made
decisions
over the years.
Yeah, I mean, lots of worst decisions, and I think a lot of the worst decisions would be around people. That whole notion of trying to keep people because they were loyal, good people in the wrong jobs. I waited too long to pull the trigger and and to try to help. I think there's a way you can gracefully. I know there's a way you can gracefully take people out of the roles that aren't right for them and help them, transition somewhere else. And almost every time that I've done that, 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, if you treat that person well, they've ended up somewhere where, they would call you when they need to move. Right. And so a lot of mistakes and good decisions for me would be around, hiring the right people, things I did right. I think, I learned at an early age that, making good noise was good. So, networking, connecting, being known out in the community. I was and have always been, large on giving back to the community. So we get involved in, volunteer organizations. I was just posting a minute ago, AMJ is a huge sponsor of Children's Aid Foundation. And, we have an event today that, our staff at the warehouse are packing bags for, children at risk. Just those sort of things that, were great decisions. They build culture. We had a lot of fun over my years at AMJ that continues doing work for the sports teams. We became the official mover for just about every Canadian professional sports team and organization. And, that did a lot for pride within the company, and it lifted us up and made us up our game so that we could be like these professional athletes that we were trying to emulate. So
That's great. Yeah,
a lot of good decisions, I think. A lot of bad decisions too, but that's where when you surround yourself with good people, I really think the bad decisions, and they don't shine quite as brightly. But again, one of the pieces of advice I would give to presidents and entrepreneurs is don't hold on to a bad decision for too long. So do not go down with the ship. I mean, there were times in my early career where I came up with an idea and everybody else in the room was kind of like, yeah, I don't think this is going to fly, and pride made me hang on to it longer than I should have, and fortunately I didn't go down with the ship. But just if it doesn't work, pull the plug. Fail quickly, they say. And
yeah, you mentioned about charities. I mean, you've been on you supported a lot of charities. You've been on a number of boards, National Club, Atlas Canada, National Ballet School of Canada, just to name a few. How do you get involved? How have you been? Have you been people reach out to you? You put up your hand. You go after a certain type. Like what for other presidents watching? Like what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so look, I think look for things that you're passionate about to begin with, right? So for me, I've always been passionate about helping children. I grew up in the military, so I'm involved with a charity that supports children of fallen soldiers. Find things that you're passionate about. Find things that are in the community that you live and work in, and reach out to them. Right? So reach out to the local hospital board and say, hey, look, if you're looking for somebody, I'm a local business person. A lot of the associations like your own that people could belong to, can probably point them in the right direction. So part of my connecting was, getting involved in charitable things, which, there's nothing wrong with, feeling good about being involved in a charity or using that as a means of connecting with people. I never did it so I could get a move, but as a result of doing it and feeling good about doing it, guess what? People, they get to know you and they do move with you. So I think seek out areas where you would be passionate about and reach out. I mean, there's very few charities that don't need help. You may not start off as president of the board, but you could start off as on a committee of an organization. And just
we have a question here from Robert Saul. Growth, and you talked about growth earlier on about you have some money and you reinvested in new trucks or technology or so on. How do you decide when to open new locations as opposed to leverage what you have till you can't anymore?
Yeah, I mean, so for us, opening new locations was a huge part of my agenda. When I first joined AMJ. And, we had a science around that. So, you want to build as much science around it as possible. So we would look at a center that we were open in Halifax, for example, and we would look at, the population, the demographics, how many staff did you need to, to service an area of that size? And we kind of build a model out and say, okay, we wanted to open in London, Ontario. So, London, Ontario was similar population to Halifax, Nova Scotia. We looked at the competitors and would, we did growth both organically, and then we went out and acquired or partnered with companies. I mean, to me, the difference between opening new locations as opposed to leveraging what you have. I mean, there was a time when, 12, 13 years ago, when there was some pressure within the organization on the board to say, should we be looking at opening the U.S. and I was saying, well, look, we're not all across Canada. We don't, we haven't exhausted Canada. Let's focus, to Robert's question. Let's focus on growing out our Canadian business before we, look at going south of the border, and you can do both at the same time, but you only have so many hands and resources. So, but I really think it's about doing your market research. The territories you want to open into, knowing what an organization should look like. So how many trucks do you need? How many staff do you need? How many salespeople do you need? What size warehouse do you need? Can you start? Is there a grow up period? Can you start with 5,000 square feet of warehousing, knowing that in 3 years' time you're going to be up to 15,000 square feet and grow into it? Just trying to alleviate as much of the risk, but really, about modeling it out versus just, I as a young banker, I tell the story sometimes about an individual that came to see me. It was, I was like in my late 20s. This gentleman was probably 10, 12 years older than I was, and he had a car dealership in town. Was very, very successful. Had a great life. As a matter of fact, I was somewhat envious. And I remember he came out one day and he said, look, I need to borrow some money. I'm going to open another dealership. And I said, great. I said, and I don't know why I asked the question, but I said, why? And he was quite taken back. And he's like, because I want to. And why? Don't you want to lend me the money? I said, no, we'll lend you the money. But I don't think a lot of people have thought through the why part of why they want to do it. And look, in this case, I mean, not all stories end like this, but opened the other dealership, really didn't know his why. And within 2 years, was pulling his hair out because he couldn't manage two of them at one time. And so, it's a little bit of be careful what you wish for, but, be as clear as you can about what you wish for. Don't grow just for the sake of growing, grow because
good advice. That's great. So just have another minute or two left here, but I want to talk about the CEO Coaching International, because you're a partner now in that organization. Maybe you can talk about how it works, how it can help presidents, how someone can get more information about it.
Yeah, so I mean, throughout my career and back to my even my early days as a young banker, I always sought out mentors, and then when I could, found a coach or belonged to organizations. And so, over the last year and a bit of having less to do with AMJ and a little more time in my hand, I came in contact with the founder of CEO Coaching International, Marc Moses, who's actually from Sudbury, Ontario. Has grown his business in the U.S. And what they do is they, whether it's CEO Coaching International or any coaching organization that you might want to use, a good coach will help advise you in in how you run your business. So our coaches at CEO Coaching International are all ex-CEOs who in Marc's terms have made big happen. So they've grown a business, have exited the business, and have that knowledge base to be able to help. Plus it's a pretty cool group that can connect. But what they also do is they help an entrepreneur or a business person see their blind spots, right? So that I wish I'd seen some of my blind spots earlier on. I mean, I'm a in control guy, and I thought the world should be more like me, instead of realizing that I don't want a CFO who's got my kind of cowboyish mentality. I want somebody that's much stronger than numbers. So I think a good coach, if you look at just about every professional athlete, the leaders like Bill Gates talks about the importance of a coach. To him, Michael Jordan. I mean, all these great athletes, they have a coach that helps them see their blind spots and helps them up their game. So whether it's an actual coach that you reach out to, somebody that you mentor. I've had both. I really suggest that people, especially because when you become a president and CEO, I mean, you get to the bit to the top of the ladder where you don't have that pure learning like you might have had. When I started as a banker, they would send us away on these educational things. As you get older and in your career and you're president, you don't have that group of people around you that can lean in and tell you when you're doing something wrong. So, and I'm enjoying
That's
it.
great. Well, Bruce, thanks so much for your information and for sharing your experiences. And I'm sure a lot of people will be taking away a lot from what you've said. And you're one of the most approachable guys I know. So, for anybody watching.
Yeah, feel free to share my email address. I do some mentoring, and happy to to take emails, answer questions.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, Bruce. And for those of you watching, there's still lots of time left. You can see the fuse, the hour above my head, 1 hour and 27 minutes to go. And feel free to network within the networking area. There's other sessions that are going to be going on for the next hour and a half. And thanks again, Bruce. And stay right there. And I'll be right. We'll say a few more words here. But thanks very much for watching, and have a great day to everybody.
My pleasure.